Today, we're reacting to your wrestling hot takes. Every single week after Friday Night SmackDown, I ask you over on X to submit your hot takes, your thoughts, concerns, opinions, or whatever else you may have on the show, and then we talk about them right here. We roast them, critique them, agree with them, disagree with them. It's a great time. So if you'd like your voice to be heard in future hot takes videos, make sure you follow me over on X at Conman167 and keep an eye on those posts. But SmackDown was certainly an interesting show. Another 3-hour episode. It felt like there was a lot going on, and there was so much from a main event match for the Women's Championship to Jacob Fatu cooking on the microphone. You had great tag team action, and of course, the killer brawl between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens. We're going to talk about this and more, but before we get into this video, make sure you leave a like on this thing, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, and keep coming back every single day because we upload wrestling videos every single day. All right, let's take a look at your hot takes. The SmackDown roster is not big enough for 3 hours. Yeah, the SmackDown roster does feel a little small in comparison to Monday Night Raw, and now that both shows are going to be 3 hours long, you have to ask the question, do they actually have enough talent to make the show consistently entertaining for 3 hours every single week? I do think WWE does have a game plan, though. The addition of Roxanne Perez to Friday Night SmackDown will help that women's division out immensely, but also allowing the tag team division to get more time on screen to build up teams like Los Garza's Pretty Deadly, DIY, Motor City Machine Guns, Austin Theory, and Grayson Waller. There's so many different tag teams on the show that you can build up and allow them to be the mid-card. Like, if WWE wants to build back their tag team division, this is a great way. Give them tag team action every single week on SmackDown. Let that division grow and thrive, and then you're going to fill like an hour of time every single week. It's not going to be a big deal. They could probably benefit, though, from using a couple call-ups from NXT to help deepen the roster, but other than that, I think the tag team division and the women's division are going to carry the show for a good chunk of it, and then you're going to see the main event angles, around the WWE Championship, and then the mid-card just tearing it up around the United States title. I think SmackDown's in a good place, actually, at 3 hours. It does feel right now they're going to have to figure out what the pacing should be every single week because there is some filler. It does feel that way right now. But as WWE learns what this roster is all about and learns how they want to make the show feel, I feel very confident that 3 hours is going to fly by. I almost guarantee that when WWE switches back to 2 hours, people are going to be like, no, I missed the 3-hour SmackDown. So I think WWE's heading in the right direction for this. But hey, who knows? We could get to next week and it's just filled with a bunch of filler. And then you guys are like, I told you so, Con. 3 hours is too much. This match is going to be absolutely wild. Not much more to say. Oh, I'll say more on it. Braun Strowman versus Jacob Fatu is going to be insane. I love that this is being built up for Saturday night's main event. You have an absolute monster among men in Braun Strowman. One of the best big man WWE has had in the last, 20 years. And then Jacob Fatu, this monster, this star who is being built up, who is a future main eventer, going to war. Dude, this feels like when they had Braun Strowman against Bronson Reed, where we were feeling like a new star was going to be made. Look, I hate to say it, but Braun Strowman at this point in his career isn't viewed in the way that he used to, right? We don't see Braun Strowman as like the WWE Universal Champion anymore. Braun Strowman is in a position where he is putting over the next generation of stars. He helped work Bronson Reed up to a main event level. Like, Bronson Reed doesn't get in War Games without his feud with Braun Strowman. And then Jacob Fatu, he's going to move on to do bigger and better things after this, but this is the stepping stone Jacob Fatu needs. It's going to be a great match. It's going to be a war. It's going to be a spectacle, and I can't wait for Saturday night's main event as a result. Los Garza need a serious push in 2025. They put on banger after banger with any team. Los Garza is awesome, man. If you saw their work from NXT, you'd know that these two guys can go in the ring, and they've been in WWE for quite some time. It's great to see that they're actually starting to get a bit of a push. The fact that WWE has now expanded SmackDown to 3 hours, like we mentioned a little bit earlier, this gives Los Garza some chance to get in the ring. It gives them opportunities to fight other tag teams and to showcase what they can actually do and how damn entertaining they are. I don't think it's a stretch to say these two should be tag team champions at some point in the near future, especially if WWE is going to have quick title changes on SmackDown like they have been for the better part of a year. I'd love to see Los Garza get an opportunity. I don't hate the idea of Legado del Fantasma being built up as a babyface unit. That's really when they got over in NXT, was when they switched from being this heel group to being this babyface group, and all of a sudden the fans loved them. They were chanting Legado during their entrance. I think this is the right call. Build them up, build them up, build them up, and let them showcase themselves. These two guys are excellent in the ring, and they deserve more opportunities. Tiffany Stratton's title reign is already so entertaining. The cash-in was perfect, and her first defense was perfect. She has so many people she can face. We might have an all-time championship run on our hands. So far, so good for Tiffany Stratton. What a great first title defense against Bayley. Her first showcase as women's champion was an excellent one, and we knew it was going to be. Like, Bayley is fantastic in that ring and can make anybody look like $1,000,000, but Tiffany Stratton also held her own. She's really risen to the occasion and has showcased that she's ready for this position. It's such a testament that she's this young and already working at a main event level against one of the greatest women's wrestlers of all time in Bayley. She has grown leaps and bounds over a short time in WWE. And you're right, this could very well be an all-time championship run if WWE is committed to the bit. If they want her to have an all-timer, they can. Like, WWE has the talent on SmackDown right now. There's a list of wrestlers that she can still wrestle. There's that rematch against Nia Jax if they want to lean into that. Of course, there's Naomi. There's Candice LeRae right there. You go beyond that, you have Bianca Belair, a returning Jade Cargill. Maybe you actually dial back another Bayley match in the future, but Bayley has changed a little bit. There's Roxanne Perez who could be called up. There's so many people right now who are right there on the cusp of being in that women's championship picture, and Tiffany Stratton could face them all and beat them all and go on just an incredible run. And I think the best part about Tiffany Stratton in this women's championship run already is that it comes on the heels of the Money in the Bank run that she had, where people weren't loving it. People weren't ecstatic for her run as Miss Money in the Bank. But the moment she cashed in, a star was born, and it looks like we are going to have an epic championship run from Tiffany. Becky, Bayley, and Charlotte could more than likely face off against their counterparts at Mania this year. Becky versus Lyra, Charlotte versus Tiffany, Bayley versus Roxanne. This could be a passing of the torch. I'm so here for this idea. I would love to see Roxanne versus Bayley. I'd love to see Charlotte versus Tiffany, Becky versus Lyra. Those matches sound amazing. And if they all took place at WrestleMania, we would see the continuation of the women's evolution. The fact that if you watched NXT Black and Gold and you saw the development of the 4 horsewomen of WWE, and then you saw them get called up to the main roster and all the feuds that they went through and all the passing of the torch moments that were there for those girls, the fact that we could literally see them now pay it forward again to the next generation of stars who truly have earned their stripes in WWE would be an amazing moment. And if it happened at Mania, all the better. Now, I don't personally think Roxanne and Bayley are going to go all the way to WrestleMania. It would be very cool if they do, but the fact that we're seeing these teased on SmackDown already and that we've seen them interact on NXT, there's a good chance that this match happens sooner than WrestleMania. But the other two, Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton and Becky Lynch versus Lyra, seem like that could be a very easy match for WrestleMania, especially if Lyra Valkyria is still the Women's Intercontinental Champion. Becky Lyra on the grandest stage in the mall would be huge, and Charlotte Flair is Charlotte freaking Flair, and Tiffany Stratton is one of the best young wrestlers in WWE. If Charlotte Flair could put over Tiffany at Mania, it would make Tiffany Stratton an absolute megastar. And having matches like that at WrestleMania is how you make the next generation of wrestlers feel like a big deal. You have to have the older wrestlers do the job. You got to put them over and make the younger talent stand out. This year's WrestleMania could be an all-timer, especially if they have these matches on them. Wyatt Six has to either have another massacre or just keep them at house shows at this point to sell merch, because Trips has killed their momentum. I don't think this is very fair for the Wyatt Six. I understand that they haven't been on TV a lot lately, and a lot of people are like, oh my god, that they're dead, they're not being pushed anymore or anything. But I think the reality is this group is difficult to book. This was the issues that Bray Wyatt ran into in the past with the Fiend character, that there is a lot of supernatural elements to this, and it is such a veer away from what's going on in the actual WWE television screen that it's difficult to entwine it with the other stories that are happening. I truly think this is why WWE pulled the plug on the Final Testament story. They moved him off of Monday Night Raw and now are going over to Friday Night SmackDown. I think they're probably moving in a direction, or at least I hope they're moving in a direction, of the bloodline versus the Wyatt Six. I think the idea of betraying your brothers and your family could very well play into that, and we could see Wyatt Six and Bloodline have even a big-time feud come WrestleMania. Like, there is some other Samoans out there in Hikuleo who could maybe very well debut on the main roster and help build to this match at WrestleMania if you wanted to do Wyatt Six versus the Bloodline. Now, in saying that, I do think that there's lots of options for the Bloodline at Mania, so don't lock in this idea that it is Wyatt Six versus Bloodline, but it certainly is a chance that it could happen. But to say Triple H killed their momentum is just not very fair in my opinion. I still think people talk a lot about the Wyatt Six. I think people are interested to see what's next with them. But again, it's just a difficult story to book. And I don't understand what WWE wants to do with the Wyatt Six. And I think that's the bigger issue. I don't think WWE has a full-on vision for where this story is going, and as a result it has felt like a little stop and start push. But the fact that we have these characters, they're really cool characters. WWE's not just going to let them fade off into the background and then eventually be like, yeah, we're going to pull the plug on this. There's so much money invested into these characters and the masks and the presentation and the build up, and of course it means something to the fans of Bray Wyatt as well, which is just as big of a part of the Wyatt Six being in WWE and having this story. The fans of Bray Wyatt get to live vicariously through this story, and as a result, WWE's not going to pull it anytime soon. I do hope that there is a clear-cut direction and we get back on track with them because they're such a cool unit, but I'm not too worried. WWE will figure it out, or at least the fool in me thinks they're going to figure it out. Surprisingly, not much build going into the Women's Rumble. Don't want it to get overshadowed by a stacked Men's Rumble. This is very fair because, let's be frank, WWE has put all their eggs into one basket for the Men's Rumble, making it look like it's one of the most stacked Rumbles of all time, and then the Women's Rumble is over here like, hey, what about us? Are you going to remember us? But I will say this, WWE does have a track record of unfortunately not making the Women's Rumble feel like a big deal going into the show, but most of the Women's Rumbles have either been better or right on par with the Men's Rumbles. In fact, I could say the last few Women's Rumbles I've enjoyed more than the Men's Rumbles. It's been so entertaining to watch. I love the stories that they tell. I just hit my elbow. I love the stories that they tell in the Women's Rumble, and I love the dynamic of all the characters and the fact that it is true, honest booking. They try to build stories from within the Rumble, and then the image of like all the women sitting on the outside of the Rumble who were eliminated ended up being the next wave of champions for WWE from this last year's Rumble. I love what they do when it comes to the Women's Royal Rumble, but they also deserve more of a build. There needs to be more hype around it. There needs to be a bigger deal who is entering and declaring for the Rumble. We need to highlight the champions. Like we have Rhea Bloody Ripley and we have Tiffany Stratton. There should be a moment where all of the women are on the stage saying like, I want one of those titles. This is a big deal. The Women's Rumble is my ticket to WrestleMania. There should be people pointing at imaginary signs on Friday Night SmackDown saying, I want to go there. If you build it up and make it feel like a big deal, it will be a big deal. And as a result, the Men's Rumble feels like a giant deal, and the Women's Rumble is just here almost like an afterthought. It's not very fair to the women who are busting their ass in WWE. It's not very fair to the fans of the women's division at all. It's simply not right that there's not a lot of attention, and I'm sure WWE will give more attention to it in the next couple of weeks here, but there's not a lot of time left. The Rumble is just literally in 2 weeks, man? Like we've got 2 episodes of SmackDown before it. We got 2 episodes of Raw before it, if that's even right. Okay, yeah, we still got 2 episodes of Monday Night Raw before it, but still, like the sentiment is there. WWE needs to build up the Women's Rumble, make it feel like a bigger deal. The only thing right now that feels like a giant deal is that we could see Charlotte Flair return in the Rumble. It's not enough. But speaking of Charlotte Flair, since now we know that Charlotte's coming back soon, do you think it's going to be on a random episode of SmackDown or at the Royal Rumble? Well, with WWE basically building up the return of Charlotte Flair with these video packages, I think it's safe to say Charlotte Flair is returning at the Royal Rumble. I don't see them building her up with these video packages just to have her come on out on a random episode of SmackDown that is like within 2 weeks of the Rumble itself. They're going to have Charlotte Flair be at the Royal Rumble. The question is, where does she enter? Does she enter at number 1? Is she number 2, number 3? Is she number 30? Like, I could see WWE going in a bunch of different directions, and honestly, people aren't going to like it, but I could see Charlotte Flair winning the Royal Rumble this year. The idea of doing Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton, we already talked about a little bit during Hot Takes, but it is such a good match that WWE has at their fingertips. You have the previous see a star of the last 10 years of the women's division in Charlotte Flair going up against this new young star who is completely taken over while Charlotte has been gone, in Tiffany Stratton. It's a battle of the old generation versus the new generation, and I can't wait to see it go down at Mania. It has to go down at Mania, and a simple way to get there is Charlotte Flair winning the Rumble. Do I love the idea of Charlotte Flair walking out and winning the Rumble in her return? No, not really. I'm sure most of you don't love that as well, but she is a heel at heart, and she could be the one to get Tiffany Stratton over as a massive babyface, especially if Charlotte Flair works the heel ways that she can. She's the dirtiest girl in the game. Well, that sounded wrong. She's the dirtiest female player in the game. My God, I was trying to say what Ric Flair used to say, the dirtiest player in the game, and then that just... Anyways, you get what I was trying to go for. Charlotte Flair is a big deal, and she's going to impact the women's division in a huge way. She might very well win that Rumble. Jacob Fatu should be pushed as a single star and go after a mid-card title. 1000%. Jacob Fatu is a star and he needs to be a champion in 2025. After that killer promo on Friday Night SmackDown, you can see this guy main eventing a WrestleMania. In fact, a lot of people already thought Jacob Fatu was a future WrestleMania main eventer the moment he stepped foot in WWE. And if he followed his career before WWE, there was a reason why people were so excited for Jacob Fatu. We're finally starting to see the man that took over the independent scene, and we're seeing him arrive in WWE. The scariest part of his promo was that he said he's just getting started. What? What do you mean you're just getting started? You're already an absolute freak. And after Solo Sikoa left him on Friday Night SmackDown, it makes you wonder, what's next for Jacob Fatu? Is he going to go after the head of the table? Is he going after Roman Reigns? Do you think he wants to try to become the tribal chief? I'd love to see a storyline where Jacob Fatu is trying to become tribal chief. I'd also love to see him and Solo have a fight against each other at some point. I think that story writes itself, especially if Solo Sikoa is literally off on his own. If he's all solo by himself, the idea of Solo going up against the Bloodline could be interesting. Like, the Bloodline story is just never gonna die. They're gonna keep adding in new Samoans every single year, so just be prepared for this head of the table, this tribal chief story to go for the next decade plus. But we need somebody who could lock down that story for a little while, and the idea of Jacob versus Roman, oh my God, like, that is a WrestleMania match. If that's not WrestleMania 41, that could be SummerSlam. It could certainly be WrestleMania 42. There's a lot of great directions for Jacob, and like, again, he's just getting started. How scary of a thought is that? But that's it. Those are your hot takes. Let me know any others that you have down in the comment section below. And while you're down there, make sure you leave a like on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss another upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.